Ozempic, smaller waists and bigger questions. There was much more ambivalence about body shape when I was growing up. The obese were named and shamed. A friend was called quite openly Mota Fat Puppy, but you cannot be too thin either. I would get quite openly criticized for my lack of heft. Kongla was the description of choice, but and this came with diet suggestions. Often it was Horlicks, that curiously Indian drink made from milk, solids, and malted wheat. I discovered it was easiest to say yes and then not to do it, since I have always had a very non-Indian aversion to all warm milky drinks. This was in the 1970s, long before we heard of the fat shaming or size zero, long before social media with its obsession with how the world sees us and all the unsolicited advice about how to improve our public persona, very long before the looks maxes misogynistic young man convinced that women care only about how they look and fixated on getting the right kind of body svelte. Even in India, at least among the social class that cannot afford makeup, gym subscription, and health foods, the norm has clearly shifted. Korean beauty tips on social media featuring prominently in a recent conversation we had college students we had with college students in Kolkata and Korea. Ideals clearly starts with slim. There is much to be said in favor of this shift. India has a very large and growing obesity problem under the US definition of obesity, which sets the threshold of obesity at BMI of 30, which places someone who is 5.6 and 85 kilos exactly on the cusp. Roughly 10% of adult Indian women and 5% of adult Indian men who qualify as obese in 2022, compared to 1.5% of women and 0.5% of men as recently as 1990. But a wide range of US definition is not appropriate because South Asian bodies are different. A higher proportion of our body mass is fat, and for that reason, they want a lower threshold of 25, which means that our 5 feet 6 inch friend would be obese if we weighed just say 70 kg. There is a speculation that this owes to our long history of food insecurity and recurrent famines, which puts an evolutionary premium on storing fat in the body. With this definition, nearly a quarter of both men and women would qualify as obese in 2019-21, up from about a fifth just 5 or so years before. To make matters worse, it turns out that the South Asian body shape, with our tendency towards a well rounded midriff, perhaps because it is the easiest place to put that fat stored away for emergencies. What the health experts call abdominal obesity creates health problems even relatively thin people. The same trend is there even among children and adolescents, 20% of whom are already overweight or obese, up from less than 15% in 2010. This is frightening because it presages a health crisis in the very near future, similar to the one that the US is not struggling with. It is widely agreed that obesity is a major cause of disease, diabetes, heart ailments, blood pressure, fatty liver disease, and other chronic ailments. And we already have a big problem in these areas. With less than 18% of world population, India suffered 31% of the loss of lives from cardiovascular disease. The potentially good news is that in March this year, semaglutide, one common form of GLP-1, came off patent in India, bringing down prices from the north of rupees 14,000 a month to a little over rupees 1,000 a month for generic versions, seems expensive but accessible to many more. GLP-1 sold over the brand names Ozempic, Mounjaro and Wegovy is an appetite suppressant. It manipulates our brains to think that we have had enough when we have not, and slows down absorption. People on it talk about instantly reaching for that second helping of pasta or third slice of pizza and realizing that they actually don't want it. They lose on average 20% of the body weight. Use of with caution, nausea and other digestive disorders are the usual side effects, at least at the beginning, but there can be other, more dire reactions, albeit very rarely. This can be a lifesaver for many, but will we actually use it right? But will we actually use it right? After all, we have a widely documented culture of casual pill pop